Booker T. Washington welcomes you to the Salon Speaker Series, featuring Dr. Jeff Gusky.
Good morning. Thank you. Well, welcome to the Booker T. Washington Salon Speaker Series. This is the first time that we're doing this. I'm really glad that you are here. This is the brainchild of Miss Ivanskaya and Miss Cornell. Let's give them a round of applause for setting this up. I'd like to begin by thanking the Booker T. Washington Advisory Board for underwriting this event this morning and for bringing us such a stellar speaker to come and talk with you. So let's give them a round of applause. Thank you to our advisory board. So for over 20 years, Dr. Jeff Gusky has been on a citizen's journey to help people find strength and hope as we all face the increasing threat of terrorism throughout the globe. Jeff Gusky is a National Geographic photographer. He's an emergency physician, explorer, and television host who lives here right here in Dallas. An exhibition of his discoveries and photographs of a hidden world of World War I is currently on display at the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C., which is the world's most visited museum. A documentary hosted by Dr. Gusky is now airing on the Smithsonian Channel called Americans Underground, Secret City of World War I. His work has been featured on Broadway and by the New York Times, the Washington Post, ABC, CBS, CNN, the BBC, PBS, NPR, and by many other news outlets throughout the world. Later in the program, Dr. Gusky is going to be joined by Trace Suber from our Communications Committee and Demi Tomasides, our Student Council Chair, for questions and answers. So please be thinking of those throughout his presentation today. And now please join me in welcoming our first Salon speaker, Dr. Jeff Gusky.
I'm so glad to be here today, but I know why you really came. You heard about the sale, right? You didn't hear about the sale? The 2-for-1 special? You didn't hear about it? The shots. You know, they're only this big. The needle is only this big. Now, who's going to line up here? So you don't want one? No. Who's your best friend?
Danny and Melanie.
Well, should we give Danny and Melanie the shots instead?
No, I don't think that.
Okay. Okay, we're not going to give shots. But I wanted to tell you why I'm wearing my white coat. Everything I do at its core is about saving lives and helping people see and avoid danger. That's my voice. That's my purpose. That is the why behind my art. And I want to help each of you find your voice, find your purpose, find the why behind your art. So I want to share some things I've learned along the way to help you achieve unconventional success as a creative, no matter what your medium. We only have a brief time together. And so let me tell you what my vision of success would be. It's that some of the things I share plant a seed that maybe 10 years from now, when you're facing a tough time, that you remember this talk, something, and that it helps you to get through hard times and to succeed. But what would really be a win is that when you're my age, talking to kids your age who haven't even yet been born, and I'm long gone from this earth, that something from today stayed with you that helped you in your careers and that you pass it on to those kids who aren't yet born. That would be awesome. So I want to share some things that will matter at critical moments, that will help you, not when life is easy, but when it's hard, that will help you find wisdom in failure and humility in success. I want to help you find your voice and your power, which will enable you to leave a legacy as creatives that extends far beyond your lives. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about me and where I'm coming from. I'm an unconventional person, as creatives often are. Creatives live on an edge of discovery. Our gifts enable us to bring things to the world that most people don't see, that have never been seen before, ever. It's a big responsibility and a big honor. So I'm a bit dyslexic, but I've been blessed or cursed with having very high ambitions for a long time, which means that I have to work really, really hard at what I do. And I was fortunate to go to a top 10 medical school and was in the top group of my class and honor society and all that. But I've made a lot of sacrifices to do this willingly, but you know, it makes me sad sometimes because I don't have a family. I'm not married. You know, I don't have kids, and I love kids, and I want to be married, and I hope to make up for all that, you know, in this latter phase of my life. But when other people would be taking vacations, having family time, enjoying themselves, I would often be working. And so to achieve a life in the arts where you're shooting for the moon, you have to make tough choices and make sacrifices. For over 20 years, I've been on a citizen's journey to find hope in a time of terror. And this photograph is from one of those journeys. In fact, not bragging, but this was a cover story for the Sunday New York Times, and it crossed the fold. And it was a big honor. And it'll probably never happen to me again, but anyway. So just as in the ER, I've tried to see the world as it really is without rose-colored glasses. I've traveled extensively to remote places in Eastern and Western Europe and the former Soviet Union, where millions of people have been murdered brutally in modern times. And that's impacted me, and it will touch the way that I communicate with you today. I've witnessed the aftermath of evil. This is an oven at the concentration camp Lublin, inside the gas chamber, where thousands and thousands of people were murdered in modern times. In fact, modern life itself has a dark side that is very, very, very dangerous. Modern societies can come crashing down because of the way that all the wonders of modern life, like these, dehumanize us. Millions of people can be slaughtered, and I believe America is not immune to dehumanization, from our society being torn apart from inside out, which is what leads to anarchy and destruction of the things that we hold dear. Creatives have a huge, important role in keeping societies human, because we're more in touch with what keeps us human. We have a unique way of seeing and understanding the world, and we can actually save lives. Believe it or not, you can save lives in your career by helping keep society human. And this is really important as we hurtle towards a time where artificial intelligence and robots are going to dominate our lives more and more. It is a big, big problem that will really come to pass when you're adults, as you grow into, and as the years pass. And your arts will help to prevent mass destruction and death. So it's serious business we're talking about today. So I'm not here to talk too much about terrorism, but I want to speak to you directly, like I talk to patients in the ER, but in a positive way, to help you achieve unconventional success in an extremely competitive world that is your future. So if you have very high goals in the arts, like me, you're going to have to make tough choices and sacrifices. And it took me a while to realize that my life as an artist and explorer was really about the same thing as what I do at the bedside, saving lives and helping patients and families avoid risk and see danger. Fortunately, I have the opportunity to do both. So I can be at the bedside and helping one patient and family at a time. And then through the arts and media and television, I can do the same thing and reach many, many, many more people. And that's why I do these other things. So this is my purpose. This is my why. And I'd like each of you to think about your why. Think about it a lot. Learn how to express it in words, how to articulate it, how to focus on it. Let it be your true north, your navigational compass throughout your artistic life, your why. As an ER doc, I've had the privilege of saving lives and helping patients and families through crisis. We form intimate bonds of trust with complete strangers in a split second. It's never about right or left, black or white, gay or straight, legal or illegal, educated or uneducated, rich or poor. None of that matters. It's just about human to human helping and trust and caring. We see people without masks. We see girls without makeup. We see boys without bling. We see everybody without sunglasses. We see the real person. And sometimes you might be surprised. You know, the tough gang members who are posturing that they're so strong and fearless turn out to be wimps. And some very quiet, unassuming person can show such courage. I'll never forget this. A young girl about your age who tragically was in a rollover and her arm was out the window. And she came in and this was all that was left. And her composure and her courage almost brought me to tears. And so it's about what's inside that gives us this strength. And it's the same with being a creative. It's about what is inside. And it's about seeing the world as it is. So we have a sacred obligation in the ER to be real and human with our patients and to care for them even though they're complete strangers. We don't see the world through rose-colored glasses. We don't see the illusions. We have to see it as it is. Sometimes we have to rip off the Band-Aid and talk to people, tell them what they don't want to hear, tough love, but it's because we care. So I'm going to switch gears. Be an artist. Okay, so as you heard, my work has been on Broadway. I have had lots of exhibitions around the US and Europe. One of my traveling exhibitions was ranked by ArtNet in the top 20 shows in the country against shows at the Metropolitan and the Getty and the Guggenheim. And my work's been exhibited with the great Spanish master Francisco de Goya and Goya Gusky. I'm a National Geographic photographer, New York Times photographer. I've done cover stories for both. I've photographed for the Associated Press. My work has been covered by media on every continent. What I don't really think about this stuff, honestly, but I'm doing it for a reason. In fact, oops, I left the clicker over here. So, yeah, over the summer, Susan Stamberg of NPR's Morning Edition, famous journalist, interviewed me inside my exhibit at the Smithsonian Air and Space. And that's the chief curator and Susan and me. Why do I mention all this? Because all this fame is fleeting. You're only as good as your last project. So I am famous for my work in World War I, but I am a nobody. I don't see myself as famous. I'm looking at the next big project. And so one of the things I'm going to say later, but I want to say it now, don't be full of yourself. Forget about the fame. Forget about the notoriety. It's about the work. It's about working your butts off to do something that's never been done before. It's about creative excellence. And as a photographer, I can tell you that the difference between a good photograph and a great photograph, which is very hard to achieve, it may be the last 5%. Subtle things that people feel they don't even know what they're seeing, but you see it. And in every media, I'm sure it's the same way, whether it's dance or writing or theater or any of the visual arts. You have to push yourself to see and execute on the last 5%. So as an explorer, I've had the privilege to find important stories that people didn't know about. Things not on the internet, stories and discoveries that have changed the way we see our world. And I've been fortunate to do it over and over again. And I'm going to share a story at the end of this talk that will blow your mind, that is recent. It went all over the world about a month ago, and I just found it 7 weeks ago. But I wanted to share one story that we did last year.
It's a new discovery.
How far down? How many meters?
10 or 20 meters.
Danger?
The first time we go, it's danger. Jeff, when we are on the cave,
Yes.
we go in this.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
Be careful, it's dangerous.
Okay, thank you. I'll be careful. You find a hole in the ground, and you crawl down into that hole, and you're in a different world. Oui? Yeah, I'm okay, Francois. I'm safe. I'm just amazed at what's down here. The wall of barbed wire. It's a live rifle grenade. It's a pregnant woman. There's a name, Louis Lefebvre. Lefevre. Another name by Louis Lefebvre under this heart. These messages left on these walls are notes to the future. These modern people from 100 years ago are talking to us. They're telling us that we are vulnerable just like they were. And World War I gives us a way to look at ourselves without being right or left, with no politics involved, to see our own vulnerabilities, to see how quickly, when we lose conscience and human decency as the governing force in our life, how quickly we can end up in a nightmare and lose everything we hold dear. I'm often asked about how I found the hidden world of World War I. It was, like so many things in life, a coincidence. I was on a 6-week trip that was arranged with the help of the French Defense Ministry. The result was that I met local people and became friends with them. We bonded around the preservation of this, what they call patrimony, this history. Even though we don't speak the same language, photography is a language, art is a language. The problem was that I had no background in photographing in complete darkness, so I went back to work in the ER in the United States, and in between patients, I was reading about how to photograph in darkness. There's no book on how to photograph underground, so I had to innovate, and I ordered basically 2 of everything. And the first time that I came to the place that we are now, which was the first stop on my return trip, we had something like 700 pounds of gear that we lowered down on a rope almost 30 feet underground. It took about an hour just to transport it by wheelbarrow deep into the site. And that's how the process began. On the walls of these underground cities, you find representations of the inner life of these soldiers in a moment in time when they were facing the first modern mass destruction, where they could be gone the next day or the next hour. There really was no other place to go where you could have some sense of security that when a bomb hit above, you wouldn't be blown to smithereens. When the war ended, these guys were anxious to go home, and they just left everything in place. All around you, you see objects of daily life. You find tobacco pouches and clocks and pots and pans, and you may pick up an object that a human hand touched 100 years ago that's been lying in the same place ever since. It's surreal. Looking at World War I, not as history, but as today, as a way of understanding ourselves and our lives, as a way of connecting to what's important about our humanness. World War I was a pivot point where technology and progress overtook our lives. We can never go back. We can never become non-modern. Modernity is with us. Modern life is something that gives us great advantages. But World War I helps us to find a place inside where we can hold on to our humanness. And that's why it's important. So I want to take you on a journey. Okay, yeah. By the way, this is one of the first photographs that I took when I became a fine art photographer in 1995. And it's amazing how sometimes your best work happens at the beginning. And because it comes from here, from inside. So, I already see we're going to run out of time, and I'm going to try to accelerate my talk so we don't miss too much. But I wanted to say that that what I'm going to share with you, it's a combination, a synthesis of my work as an ER doc, an artist, and an explorer. And so I wanted to say that we're all addicted to modern life and very out of touch with reality. It makes us vulnerable, it makes us unhappy, and for creatives, it gets in the way of achieving unconventional success. We now live in a Photoshop world. The line between what's real and fake is getting harder and harder and harder to see. We often hear people say it's all relative. There's nothing relative in my job as an ER doc. People die if I screw up. It's not a video game. It's not an idea. It's not an abstraction. It's not a debate. It's a frontier where there are horrible consequences for bad decisions. What do I mean by a frontier? It's like facing a bear in the wilderness, coming right at you. If you don't find safety, you are going to get eaten alive. And I don't have time to tell you the story about where I learned to suture in my first year of medical school in Alaska, but it was after a bear attack. And so it has real significance for me. Being a creative is like being an ER doc. It's the real world. There are consequences for your choices and actions, for screwing up, for not striving to deliver excellence. The consequences can be brutal. In fact, they will be brutal. So if you work very, very hard, refine your talent, find your voice, harness your power, discover your why, you can succeed beyond your wildest dreams. You can do it. The real world is not just about the outer world where you're competing, striving, and doing business in the arts. There's an inner world as creatives that's even more important, I believe, than the outer world. It's where creative genius and excellence comes from. I want to talk about this inner world, and I want to talk to you about the 3 C's. I'd like you to remember the 3 C's: conscience, courage, and curiosity. So when you're facing hard times as a creative, you're facing your toughest challenges, remember these 3 C's. So conscience, how does it feel? It feels good inside, but it's not for the outside world to see. It's what you do when no one's looking. It's doing the right thing. It comes from your moral core, your moral compass. And that's what distinguishes us from machines. When you engage your moral core, you unleash your passion and creativity. Courage, how does it make you feel? It comes from within. It's not from your head, it's from your heart. It almost always reveals itself against a backdrop of uncertainty. It requires action, not words, but action. It's not about what you think, it's about what you do. It requires a certain idealism and altruism, a belief in things outside yourself. It's about vision, values, things you cherish, things you believe in, things you will sacrifice for. And it's important, not when it's easy, but when it's hard. It's about being alone. It's about being unpopular, being ahead of your time. It's about taking risk and standing tall when you're the only person that sees your vision. Everyone thinks you're crazy, you're nuts, you're a space cadet. I have been there so many times I can't even tell you. Probably blocked them out. So creatives are visionaries. Being a creative requires real courage because initially you're the only one usually that sees what you see. And eventually you become a hero if you're right. The life of a creative who is a trendsetter versus a trend follower is that you're out on a limb, you're alone. There's no affirmation initially. People think you're out there, but at least they respect your passion. So just remember, if you are going to take on excellence, you are going to be alone and you're going to have to rely on courage, conviction, and fearlessness. Curiosity, how does it make you feel? You're receptive, you're open, you're surveilling, you're seeing things that have been there for years, decades, even centuries, and no one's seen them, and you're seeing them. And you're thinking, well, this can't be real. But I'm here to tell you that there are so many things that are out there that no one has seen that will affect your creative life that are not even on the internet. And it's about being curious. It's about looking for things hidden in plain sight. So I want to talk to you briefly about habits. And this is a habit that I have learned to do, and I want you to do it. When you get an idea, maybe in the shower, it may be when you're working out, it may be in a dream that wakes you in the middle of the night, write it down then, or take your smartphone and record it, even if it's just a mumbo jumbo of ideas. But capture that idea. That's how the great ideas come through. They come through from here. Discipline yourself to do that. Don't be lazy about the little things that are critical to your success. Listen to your gut. It's kind of mysterious and it's not always right. And you have to pay attention to your head. But if you listen to your gut, all kinds of things are going to come through. I do it in the ER. I mean, there are times where I actually have saved lives because I listened to my gut. And then the nurse will come up to me afterwards and say, Dr. Gusky, how on earth did you figure that out? And it's a very satisfying feeling when you have just saved someone's life because you considered something that was so not obvious, but you responded to your intuition. So, to put a wrap on the 3 C's, courage, conscience, and curiosity, they're like a tune-up for your inner world. They prime the pump of creativity. They help you to understand that your inner world is like a channel, allowing your gifts to come through you. There was a famous group a number of years ago, actually I knew them when I was your age, called Seals and Crofts, and they had a song that where there was a line, "Make me as a hollow reed so I may give them what they need." So get your ego out of the way. Let inspiration flow through you. You own the ideas, but you don't own them. Accept that there are things about your gifts that you will never understand, that will remain mysterious. It's just the way it is. And be humble and do not be full of yourself. We're going to run out of time, and so I'm going to skip ahead. I just want to say that one of the things that that is really, really important is about building relationships, and it's about people. Because being successful as a creative is not about the good times, it's about the hard times. It's about setting your expectations right. It's about when everything falls off a cliff, it's how you deal with those situations. And it's the people in your life, mentors, your friends, and your family that are cherished. They will help guide you through. And so there's a section of the talk that I'm going to have to leave out because of time, but value those relationships. Seek out mentors. They see you. They see the spark of your creativity. They can help usher you through the phases of your growth. They can open doors. They can network for you. Look for friends. Look for friends that are better than you. Don't be egotistical and jealous. Look for people that can teach you things and inspire you, even amongst your fellow students. Honor their success. And it will come back to you many-fold over. I really feel sorry that I'm not going to have time to share more. So, finally, I want to say that to find your power, you have to use your power. You have to lead. And leading is oftentimes a very unselfish thing. It's about solving other people's problems and making them feel safe. It's about teaching, inspiring, giving. And if you do that, you will become a very powerful person. And remember that nowadays that we live in a world where people are so extroverted. The people that are posturing like they're powerful are often weak, and the people that are really powerful are quiet. Their power is like the tip of an iceberg. You just see what's above the surface in really powerful people. Most of it's beneath the surface. It's restrained. And if you can build that power and you find people like that and bring them close to you, bring them into your life where they can teach you and inspire you and motivate you, it will help you achieve unconventional success. So I'm going to skip ahead, and we're not even going to get close to what I want to share with you. I won't have time to tell you the story about this photograph. It's the Entryway Photograph inside the Smithsonian. It's 17 and a half feet wide. I took it last June in the middle of the night, and some friends from Dallas actually came over, and we took a break, and you see these bunkers over here? So we had wine and cheese at 3 in the morning. So my first body of work was on a hidden world related to the remnants of mass destruction after World War II, what we call the Holocaust. I'm just going to go through very quickly. This is a former Jewish home. You can see it because of where the mezuzah was, and it's now being used as a public toilet, or it was back then when I photographed it. There's a tremendously sad story about what happened behind this train, people being taken to concentration camps and murdered. a basement torture chamber at Auschwitz. The showers leading into the gas chamber. A former Jewish home where everyone in the home was taken out and killed. This is another story, another body of work, and it's on the border in a place that is now one of America's poorest counties, and it turns out that there is a secret there. Amazing story about a founding of America that no one knows about, and you know the story of Alex Haley's Roots. You know, you've seen it on television, or at least there was a newer version of Roots. This is like Roots for Hispanic Americans. It's a dignity story, and it tells us about how Hispanic Americans participated in the founding of America. This is a porciones marker placed by the surveyors of the King of Spain in the 1760s, before America was even a country. And it's just down from the Burger King in Roma, Texas. So Hollywood used to make movies on the lot, you know, in Hollywood, except for this movie, which was made in Roma, Texas, way back before it was popular to make movies outside of Hollywood. And the great director, Elia Kazan, the great author, John Steinbeck, who wrote the screenplay, they were behind this movie called Viva Zapata. And so it was filmed in part in this store in Roma, the Guerra store, with Marlon Brando. And on this balcony in Roma stood the Hispanic American who was the first to win an Academy Award. Does anyone who know who that is? It was Anthony Quinn. He won an Academy Award in 1952 in Viva Zapata, and it happened here. This is one of the old Jacales buildings from the early times. This is important. I stood next to, we did a Univision documentary. It won a Lone Star Emmy after my book Border Town, which I co-authored with an SMU historian. It was published by Yale. And people don't realize it, but the Civil War was fought in Texas, and there was a corps of Hispanic American soldiers in the 2nd Texas Cavalry that almost shut the war down. They were against slavery, for America, very patriotic, very courageous. And it turns out the last battle of the Civil War was not fought in Virginia. It was fought 11 miles east of Brownsville on the Rio Grande in a place called Palmetto Ranch. And the last soldiers to die for America were the sons of these early Mexican-American pioneers. They love America down there. This is my World War I body of work. In 2011, this was the first day, and I'm photographing on this road, which was the original trench where French soldiers were standing when poison gas was released from behind these barns by the Germans the first time. So this placid place that's unmarked is ground zero for modern mass destruction in the 20th century. We won't have time to tell you the stories behind so many of these. Okay, I'm going to have to leave out I just want to give you a very quick thumbnail though. If you go onto the web and type in Reuters and Gusky, so this most recent story I found, hopefully it'll be a movie. It's the story of the African-American World War I hero who should have been the first Medal of Honor winner in the 20th century, and no one knows his name. And no one knows about the monument that these poor sharecroppers from South Carolina who had nothing, they contributed $1 a man to this monument that they left. It's the only one of its kind, placed by and paid for by African American soldiers. And on that monument, which is way out in the farm field, unmarked, are the names of 2 African American Medal of Honor nominees. And it's the opposite of when we see all of the confusion about believing in America, what unites us, with this football controversy. This is a story that goes deeper than race, deeper than class, education. The hero that I discovered, when you look at his draft card, there's an X. He couldn't even sign his name. He couldn't read or write. Yet it was his country and he died for it. So please go on. It's just Reuters, Gusky, and you can read about it. It's an amazing story. Okay, I guess we have to switch gears.